Walk down a hallway built to hold hundreds of students when it is completely devoid of people, and you will immediately feel a creeping dread. There is a psychological term for spaces like this that are suspended between their intended bustling purpose and total abandonment: liminality. This exact unease is the trap waiting for the protagonist of room number 206. While the rest of the student body packs up and heads home for the holidays, he makes the decision to stay behind in his dorm room to study for his upcoming preliminary exams. For the entire academic year, he has relied on the constant chaotic hum of campus life to anchor him to reality. But now, that safety net evaporates overnight, replaced by a sudden, heavy silence echoing through the vacated building. When the human brain is unexpectedly deprived of the ambient noise and movement it expects, it searches for threats. If it cannot find any, it begins to misfire, inventing shapes in the shadows and sounds in the silence, simply to fill the sensory void. By staying behind, the student isn't just choosing a quiet place to study, he is stepping into an environment where the absence of others creates a vacuum that his own mind will eventually be forced to fill. Needing a place to jot down his thoughts, he ventures out to a local shop. There, a strange shopkeeper pushes a specific, specialized diary into his hands, accepting whatever loose change the student offers as payment. The shopkeeper lays out a specific, anomalous rule for this transaction. Whatever stories the boy writes inside the pages of this diary will physically manifest into the real world. For a creative writer who deliberately sought out isolation to work on his craft, this object turns his primary tool, his imagination, into the very thing that makes the hostel dangerous. The diary itself is entirely passive. It requires an author to function. It acts as the match, but the highly volatile, sensory-deprived environment of the empty hostel provides the perfect fuel. Alone in his room, the protagonist begins to write. He crafts a story about a lonely traveler stranded in an empty hotel late at night, who suddenly hears the unnerving sounds of ghost children playing in the halls. This diagram outlines the structural parallel at play. Two timelines side by side, the protagonist's reality in the physical hostel and his narrative in the fictional hotel. The diary exploits this overlap. The magic dissolves the barrier, allowing fictional elements to overwrite the real world. What follows is an environmental anomaly. The horror mechanism of the film relies on the fact that the physical laws of room 206 are being actively rewritten in real time by the ink on the page. The room ceases to be a place of shelter. The walls, the doors, and the hallways morph into a hostile entity, entirely focused on trapping the person inside. The story depicts the total collapse of the boundary between the creator and the creation. The fiction is no longer contained to the desk, it is breathing down his neck. The sensory escalation hits its peak when the protagonist stops writing, looks up, and hears laughing children echoing down his physical dormitory hallways. This marks his psychological break. He realizes that his own written words are reaching backward in time, corrupting the safety of the space he occupies. Trying to run is useless. He cannot escape the building because the environment around him has stopped obeying geographical logic to follow the narrative logic he just outlined in the book. He has lost all agency. He started the night as the author, commanding the story from above, and has been forcefully downgraded to a helpless victim trapped inside his own plot. The climax of the story arrives with inevitable brutality. The ghost children he invented tear through the threshold of his reality, physically manifesting inside the room to pull him into the dark. This attack is the logical conclusion of the diary's rules. The author wrote an attack into existence, so the author must endure one. But the story immediately resets. We pan back to the strange shopkeeper, where an entirely new diary sits waiting on the counter, ready to be sold to the next solitary student who walks through the door. This cyclical ending reframes the curse as an ever-hungry trap, one that specifically targets those who have already removed themselves from the presence of others. The curse acts as a parasite on human loneliness. To survive, it requires a steady supply of fresh, isolated minds to feed its engine. Which leaves us with one final analytical question. Why did the curse diary specifically require an empty college hostel to work effectively? We can map this out on a feedback loop. Physical isolation breeds deep anxiety. That internal tension provides the emotional energy required for the diary to push the final node, reality manifestation. As the anxiety grows, the manifestation becomes physically stronger. Empty, massive environments act as the perfect incubator for this process. They strip away normal social distractions until all a person can hear is their own racing heartbeat and the scratching of a pen. In this environment, the boundary between thought and reality dissolves completely. When we isolate ourselves, the quietest rooms can become the loudest prisons, allowing our own fears to write a story we can no longer control.